Boom. Loss arrived not with thunder or blood but with names spoken too loudly, names thrown like stones rather than remembered like kin. Her name was among them, carried across air that tasted of judgment. She stood inside that circle of strangers, not bound, not shamed, yet treated as though her existence required justification. The accusations were not shouted, but floated coldly, the way winter speaks even when the sun is present. She was 28, and she had already learned that surviving does not guarantee peace. Sometimes it guarantees only endurance. They remembered her husband, not with tenderness, but with suspicion, suggesting land matters loosened when he died. She held her tongue, because words wasted on disbelief always return distorted. He arrived just as her resolve began thinning. 35, quiet, carrying an emptiness that did not ask for attention. He had been a rancher long before grief hollowed his spirit, but grief erases color from even fertile memory. People knew him, yet knew nothing about him. Loneliness molds features more sharply than age does, and it had carved him into someone watchful. The men nearby greeted him not with warmth, but with the mild caution reserved for people who cannot be predicted. He ignored them, not rudely, but as someone uninterested in conversation that served no healing. The crowd shifted, tightening around her story. They spoke of property lines, of promises no one recorded, of paper that never reached her hands. Someone implied she no longer held claim to anything. Another questioned whether she ever truly belonged. Their remarks carried no violence, but violence does not always begin with strikes. Sometimes it begins with dismissing a person's right to stand where they stand. Her breath faltered, yet she remained upright. She knew that dignity was often mistaken for stubbornness, yet stubbornness was sometimes the only barrier separating a person from collapse. He watched, not drawn by beauty, not moved by rumor, but alerted by familiarity. Grief recognizes itself in others. He recognized the kind of silence she used, not prideful silence, but protective silence. He remembered how silence felt when his brother died and neighbors spoke like judges. A man pressed her with questions she had already answered. She refused to repeat them. He stepped closer, reducing her space, reducing her breath. The cowboy moved without planning, without even deciding. Some actions are instinct rather than intention. He spoke low, words shaped more by empathy than courage. Pretend you belong to me and come with me. The sentence was not ownership. It was shelter. She hesitated, knowing compliance would fuel speculation. But speculation had followed her for years. New versions held no power. She nodded once. He turned away, not touching her, not ushering her, simply offering direction. She followed, still unsure whether leaving meant surrender or survival. The murmurs behind them faded. Away from the circle of scrutiny, he paused. He offered water. She accepted, not because she was grateful, but because thirst had no pride. He did not speak apologies. She did not offer thanks. Words would have burdened the moment. He eventually said he intervened only because harm was forming. She replied that she needed no rescue. He agreed. Nothing was owed. That agreement steadied her. Two people acknowledging mutual independence can sometimes become allies, not captives. She asked why he noticed what others ignored. He answered that loneliness trains the ear to detect quiet suffering. They walked without destination. Distance softened the weight pressing against her shoulders. Night approached, but neither hurried. She wondered whether tomorrow would repeat today. He wondered whether she would vanish back into sorrow before dawn. Before rest settled, she admitted that having someone walk beside her felt unfamiliar. He admitted he had not walked beside anyone in years. Their confessions drifted between them like breath meeting cold air, forming something temporary yet real. Nothing external changed. Yet something internal loosened, like a knot releasing under gentle hands. Morning had not arrived, but they both felt the pull of it, uncertain, unclaimed, unfinished. And though future remained unspoken, both sensed that leaving would not erase the moment. A borrowed belonging had become something sturdier, something neither of them could yet define. The path ahead might scatter, might tighten, yet for the first time, neither stood entirely alone within it. And morning waited quietly. Boom arrived again, not loud, not explosive, but shaped like consequence, shaped like accountability returning before anyone felt ready. Morning had barely settled when riders approached, voices stiff with the certainty of men who believe their judgment is law. They claimed she had been taken, claimed she owed explanation, claimed her steps carried implication. She did not retreat. The cowboy remained at her side, not as savior, not as possession, but as someone unwilling to let accusations stand unchallenged. They asked who granted her permission to leave. She said permission belonged to those who still feared being owned. Their leader dismounted, boots grinding dry earth, gaze narrow enough to cut. He accused her of deceiving the council, of abandoning what must be settled. She replied that the land dispute had already been spoken into exhaustion, that repeating truth never makes it truer. He shifted his accusation toward the cowboy, suggesting she had been influenced. Influence, the cowboy said, requires intention, and he carried none. His voice held no threat, yet the firmness of it unsettled the men accustomed to obedience. The second rider spit near her feet, not from disgust, but to show superiority without speaking it. She did not flinch. Her stillness unsettled them more than anger could. She asked whether they ever listened or simply waited for their voices to dominate. No one answered. Silence rippled, exposing a truth none wished to acknowledge. She had been judged before evidence ever existed. The cowboy stepped forward, offering dialogue not confrontation. He said he would return with her, if fairness guided the discussion rather than verdict already carved. The riders accepted, but suspicion clung to them like unwashed dust. The journey back held no words, only wind brushing through grass, only hooves puncturing quiet ground. She walked beside the cowboy, steps steady, expression unreadable. He wondered whether she returned to defeat or to closure. She wondered whether he escorted her from duty or human alignment. Neither asked. Questions sometimes bruise when spoken aloud. The wind carried the fragile hush between them like fragile fabric stretched across open air. When they reached the meeting hall, elders waited. One woman spoke first, voice not cruel, merely conditioned by years of consequence. She asked whether the native woman intended to dispute again. The woman answered that she did not come to fight, she came to end misinterpretation. Papers were produced, maps drawn, testimonies revisited. The cowboy spoke only when required, offering clarity where assumptions twisted truth. The riders who brought them shifted uneasily, exposed by the unraveling of their certainty. The decision arrived slower than breath. The land bordering the cowboy's property would remain with her tribe, unchallenged, unburdened by false claims. She was free to stay or go. Relief did not bloom, it unfurled quietly, patient as thawed snow. The cowboy stepped outside first, giving space for her to choose her direction. She followed, not because she needed guidance, but because his presence offered steadiness instead of expectation. He told her his brother once defended boundary rights and was dismissed until death silenced him. She listened without intruding. Her husband had died similarly unseen. Different histories, same dismissal. The air between them softened. Pain understood cannot be erased, but it becomes lighter when recognized. She asked what he would do now that peace had settled. He said ownership meant nothing without belonging, and belonging was not land. Belonging was being permitted to stand without justification. She did not promise she would return to his land, yet her eyes held intention he did not risk interpreting. He told her he would not visit unless welcomed. She nodded, not reluctant, but hallowed by the weight of being respected without condition. He waited before mounting his horse, leaving space for choice, for refusal, for invitation. She did not speak. She simply closed the distance between them with a single step, not touch, not vow, just presence. She walked away then, toward her people, toward a home that had doubted her yet remained hers. He watched until distance dissolved her into horizon. Something had shifted, something no decree had created, something no judgment could dissolve. And those steps diverged, both knew separation did not mean ending. The next crossing would not require pretending. It would be chosen.